Welcome to Ulua. You live, you work, you art. This is Between the Lines. Today, we dissect the road less traveled.
This is Caro from Ulua again, and we are in the podcast Between the Lines and seeing this book, which is called The Road Less Traveled. And we will be talking about the first chapter of the book. I mean, the first section, which is discipline. It has many points into discipline. And today, within discipline, the first one is problems and pain. And Dr. Peck starts saying, just the very first sentence of this chapter is, life is difficult. And he then comes to explain that if we really acknowledge that, if we acknowledge that life is difficult and that we will have to overcome problems and conflicts and many things, then it is easier for us because we already know that problems will come and we don't pretend that everything will be magical and will be fantastic. There will be problems. No matter what you do, you will have to overcome those problems. And this phrase comes actually from, he talks also about other religions from Orient and West. So everything is mixed here. I really like this book because of that. And he takes this idea from the Buddhism, from Buddhism, because in Buddhism, they think that life is suffering. And we will be talking more about it. I must say I'm not a Buddhist, and I don't really like completely Buddhism, but some teachings are useful. So that's between parentheses if somebody cares about that. So once we accept that life will be difficult, we will start growing because we know we have to overcome our problems in order to grow. There's no other option. Well, there are other options like doing nothing and instead of growing, being in decay. But if you are here, I think you would want to grow. So he also says that it's not that life is only suffering or only pain. There's also joy because we have all these things going on and off in our lives, right? We have some difficult times and we have more light times in our life. So everything is part of the flavor or the components that are in the middle of life. And here is one of the things that you might think, that's obvious. Everybody knows that. And as I said in the intro, there will be some things that we think, that's obvious. I don't need a book to tell me that. And that's true. But even if it's super obvious, many people, and many people I know, and I used to be one of those people, are not willing to suffer. And that willingness to accept that we will be suffering, wherever we like it or not, we will be under pain, is what actually makes us grow, right? As I was saying. Because in my case, for example, many times I thought I was entitled to, I don't know, I was entitled to being being taken care of. I was entitled to being paid, I don't know, certain amount of money, for example. I don't know, things that we think I deserve this. This word deserve is this unwillingness to really have this pain. There will be sometimes that we have to deal with things maybe we think we deserve something and the other part is not willing to give the thing we think we deserve, and that makes us suffer because there's a gap in the expectations. And that is something that we have to deal with, right? So that entitledness, I don't know, I'm making this word up, is what makes us suffer. That gap in the expectations that we have. And sometimes things come as a surprise. For example, as I mentioned in my catharsis episode, the very first one of this channel, I from one day to another I was in terrible pain, and that was something I really didn't want to deal with, because it was really painful, and I was like that for 6 months. And in the meantime, yes, I started dealing with it, but sometimes it's super painful and we just don't know where to go next, right? And there are some things that you will have just to go through the pain, as the Buddhist says, um, as the Buddhist said, because there's no way of repairing some things in life. So there are some things that you just have to accept. This is the things that we have to do right now, the things we have to go through right now. And it is super easy saying it, but not living it. I remember that I actually remembered about this book when I was in so much pain, and I started reading the very first episode, as I said, and it says life is difficult. And sorry, I think I said the wrong sentence. Is life is difficult, he says. And when I read that, at that moment, I didn't want to continue reading this book. It was until now that I'm feeling so much better right now that I wanted to reread it. Sometimes you just have to go through the process, and maybe it's not the time for learning something until you are out of the process, because when you are in the middle of a painful process, it will be more difficult for you. But yes, I accepted that that was the thing that was going on. There's nothing. I actually wasn't at odds with the book at the time. I wasn't angry with the book, but I said, right now it's not the time to take learnings from this, because I am in the moment of the process of pain. So it will be times that maybe the process of your pain has been, I don't know, it's just finishing and you are ready to learn. Some people learn at the beginning. So if that is your case too, maybe you are in pain and you have some situation, this might not resonate with you right now. But after you have passed that process, or you are in certain stage of this process, you might be willing to understand a little bit more and how to make the best out of the things that you have gone in the past. So anyways, I'm always going off topic, so sorry about that. But another thing he says here is that by not being willing to suffer, what we do is we are transferring our responsibility into others. So, and it comes to mind that the funny phrase that during the Obama presidency they say, "Thanks, Obama." It was because people was saying, blaming the president. Here happens so. So everyone is blaming the president, is blaming their neighbors, I don't know, their bosses, everything, everyone else, even though they might have some responsibility. But the first responsibility we have is on us. Again, during the process of pain, it's so difficult to understand who's the one to blame. And yeah, yes, yeah, I was thinking about that. So it's difficult, but now that if you are in a stage where you can reflect about the pain you've been through, it's good to know that maybe you want to take responsibility for this thing that you have traveled, or the road you have gone through. And again, when you are in the process, maybe you don't want to learn anything from it because you can't. Sometimes you just can't. But once you pass through that, you have the option to continue being the victim of the situation, or you can take the responsibility and say, okay, what I can learn from it and what I can do about it, and how can I solve the problems. So Dr. Peck says pain should be seen as a problem, right? Something that we can solve. And again, in the moment it's super difficult, but once you have passed it, you can, or there are also different types of problems. There are some problems that are not that painful and you can deal with them in the moment, and you can be willing to to do something about that, and being courageous to be able to deal with the problem. Because if you don't solve the problems, and you avoid the pain forever, that pain will be stored somehow in you as a person, and it will explode in other circumstances of life. And it can be something, let's say, something which could be seen as painful from this doctor's perspective. For example, procrastination, because in the meantime, the more you procrastinate, maybe the more you suffer from, or you deprive yourself of having some other choice. For example, that's something that we could say painful, but it's not completely painful, and something that it will endure for months and something like that. It's just some little pain that we can deal with, and we sometimes don't want to or don't know how to. So there are different levels of pain, we can say. And every pain leaves us with feelings associated to this pain. That can be anger, sadness, anxiety, fear, despair, anguish, guilt, loneliness, all those things, and grief also. All those things, if we handle these feelings, these problems, and this situation in a good way, we can build up from that. We can become more powerful, let's say, than before, because we have learned something, we have understood something, and we are growing our wisdom, you are growing your courage, you are growing your willingness to go and go ahead and solve the problem. Okay, again, so that's the good part, when you are willing to overcome the problem and you're willing to learn and to get the most out of it. Even if it was super painful, now you say, okay, what will I take from here and be more powerful or more or better person, or whatever it is that you want to become, or the things you want to do. So in this avoiding the problems, in this avoiding the problems, in this avoiding these feelings and swiping them under the rug, what we do is it becomes time when we can't contain them, because the rug has been full with that trash that we were putting under. And sometimes what people do is they go to drugs, or go to I don't know, some addictions, social media maybe nowadays, which in the book doesn't say, because quite old like me. And so we're trying to numb that pain. We're trying to sedate that pain. We're trying to make it go away by doing things that are really not in our, they won't give us joy or the joy we want to achieve in our lives. It's just delaying this pain, forgetting about it, trying to do something else, being super productive because I don't want to see what's going on at home, things that I've lived in the past, for example. And this is because we don't want to suffer. It's not because we don't want to grow, because we are idiots or we are stupid people. No, it's because we don't want to suffer. Because we don't know how to suffer, and we don't know how to suffer in the good sense. He actually teaches during this book how to suffer in like little doses so we can grow at the same time. And that's something I really like, because it's not that we just suffer and then okay, so let's turn everything down and we are going to suffer and everything will be bad. No, it's we need that we have to suffer, but we also have tools to make that suffer less painful. So yeah. And another thing, I have taken some notes here. Another thing that I found super, super important about this book is that this doctor, remember he's a psychiatrist and a psychologist also, and he says that every suffering that we don't want to overcome, or we don't know how to overcome, actually leads to mental illness. That really struck me at the time, because I said, wow. And yes, we start, for example, going into addictions, going into habits that make us feel bad, be bad, and or we just try to numb things instead of growing up. But also sometimes it's unconscious, but also at the same time we are I don't know, it comes to mind like a terrible phrase, killing our brain. we are yes, becoming unhealthy, and our mental health is diminishing because we don't want to grow up, basically. Again, because sometimes we don't know how. It's not that we don't want to, but we don't know how. We don't know where to get the help from. We sometimes don't even know we have a problem. That's another thing. So we build layers and layers and layers of this. He called it. Again, I'm not a psychologist, but he says that we become neurotics by layering all these problems and never taking care of them. And then it becomes a chronic mental illness. Actually, I have it written down here, quoting him, it becomes a chronic mental illness. That's, of course, needless to say, super unhealthy for our minds and for our spirits, he said. And again, spirits, he said, is like equal to our mind, if you want to see it that way. So the main idea he has from this chapter, the very first one, is that we need to understand the necessity of suffering, but not just suffering, but also to understand that by going through this process, we will be able to grow. And the best part, I think, is avoiding, or if we want to avoid something, we want to avoid mental illness, for example, just by understanding how to deal with this, right? And start beginning the process of really healing ourselves. And just to finish this first chapter, he says that there are, and we will see this in the next chapters coming, but I will introduce a little bit. He said that discipline is a technique for suffering. That we could see that, because remember, this chapter is called discipline, but we didn't talk specifically about discipline right now. And he said discipline ourselves into suffering and understanding that this suffering has to happen, but we can have tools for making it easier and more livable for us during the process. This discipline has different techniques for suffering, it has tools, for suffering, and these tools are that can even help children. Even the children can understand and learn these tools for the rest of their lives. So I think it's super important. The first one is delay of gratification, acceptance of responsibility, dedication to truth, and balancing. So those are 4 simple tools that we will learn throughout the book on for us to really be able to cope with the suffering in a healthy manner. So I'm super excited to continue, and I hope you are too. I might continue to doing the next episode right now, and I will be recording it in different occasions. So I hope you are excited too. Sorry, in continuing this with this book. And if you want to comment something, just please do it. Subscribe and follow everything so you don't miss the next episode. Bye bye.
Stay tuned for Ulua's next episode.